and then clap. Okay, so for the documentary, can you guys introduce yourself? And that would be stating your name, your age, major, and your role in WRI. Oh, first, let's default by starting with Mehraz first, and then Sarah for all of the future questions. Got that. Okay, let's go.
Okay, wait. So name, role, what else?
Name, age, and major. I guess that are relevant questions for just knowing about you and your role in WRI.
Okay, cool. My name is Mehraz. I just recently graduated from UT in December. I was a marketing and Plan 2 major. And I'm from Austin, Texas. I'm 23 years old. And my role in Women's Relief Initiative is I'm the Business Development Director and Chief Financial Officer.
Hi, I'm Sarah Deek. I'm 23 years old and I graduated in May 2020 with a bachelor's in civil engineering. I am director of programs and events for WRI, and yeah.
Awesome. So how long have you guys been with WRI and when did you join?
You want to go, Sarah?
I've been in since May 2020, so for 2 months.
I joined in April, so yeah, not too long either.
Okay, so when you guys first started in WRI, how did you find out about it in the beginning?
I found out about it. I actually just found out about it through Facebook. Like this article from the Daily Texan popped up on my feed, and I've always been very interested in menstrual equity work and did some menstrual equity work on campus when I was still there. So I was really excited to see that there was an organization at UT that was trying to create a biodegradable disposable pad, because I thought that that was an amazing solution to a period poverty problem and an environmental waste problem. And I, have always thought that something like that was really needed in Bangladesh, which is where my parents are from. And so I just saw the article and I reached out. I saw that someone I knew had been quoted in the article. So I reached out to that person and then was like, hey, can I get involved? So that's how I got involved.
I saw a flyer in the ERC at UT and I just thought, whatever. I'll see what this is. And once I've learned that the purpose was to provide improve sanitary access in developing countries, I thought I could really contribute by adding in what I've learned in civil engineering, and what I want to further research in is how we can manipulate tangible aspects of the environment and how that interplays with human health. So I saw WRI as a way to supplement my personal goals for research and also contribute to something that is close to me and close to my background.
Very cool. And so what were the first things that you guys did as WRI members?
I don't even remember.
Or like projects you helped with, perhaps?
I think I just kind of jumped on and wanted to see what was not there yet. And since I have kind of a business background, I saw that a lot of their like initial business assets hadn't been developed yet. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like as a marketing major, I think they're doing a great job with social media, but I'm seeing some things on the back end from the business side that aren't there, like a brand guidelines or like a sponsorship packet. And these are all things that eventually will be needed. So I just kind of like hopped in and found spots and gaps to fill, of course, with, you know, guidance from the people that were already there. Yeah. And then just generally helped with other random things as they pop up, like applying for grants and things like that.
The biggest project I've worked on is developing the curriculum, and Mehraz has played a big role in that project as well. That's pretty much the only thing I've been actually working on. I've been adding in little tidbits of help here and there.
Yeah, I think one of the roles that I've played is like getting the ball rolling on some things and then delegating tasks and trying to make sure that those projects like have people on them, like the curriculum project. Like I like it, and then Sarah's done a really great job from just leading that project and taking charge on it. And same with like the website. I tried to like get things organized on the back end and you know, figure out like what websites we should use to host it and things like that, and then try to delegate tasks from there, and of course help wherever I can.
I really like how you guys said that you can put on like many hats and try to fill in the gaps and see where you can implement your experiences. That's kind of basically like a startup setting style, which basically because WI started very new. So how do you like that like kind of experience? Like what kind of power does that give you? Not power, but like what does that empower you to do? And how did you glean your experience to do these things?
I guess that's true. It is kind of startup-y. I guess just as someone who's worked in startups, I do enjoy that environment. I feel I'm very interested in lots of different kinds of things. So it's nice when I get to wear a lot of different hats instead of just being placed in one bucket and just being forced to stay there. I like, you know, the process of creating things and problem solving and thinking critically about how to solve those problems. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily someone that, you know, it helps that it's a topic that I'm really passionate about, because if you're not, it's sometimes hard to find the motivation to take on a lot of different projects, especially for stuff that, you know, like I'm sure Sarah can agree, none of us ever thought that we would be putting together a curriculum, basically writing a textbook. So yeah.
I like the startup-y feel mostly because I believe it allows us I feel like it's an opportunity to display my unique expression from that displays the combination of talents that I've gathered throughout undergrad. So being involved in the gym life, my civil engineering background, and put them together into something new. And also just the attitude and stuff is a way to display the character that I cultivated during my undergrad experience. So that's very rewarding, and that is a luxury to have. But with a startup's experience, it's hard to know your limitations and assess it and not feel overwhelmed because there's so much to do. Or it feels like that sometimes.
Yeah, there with startups and I guess nonprofits and newer organizations like this, end, because it all feels like you feel responsible, because if you don't do it, then it's not going to get done. It's not like the intern can take care of, like, that's not how it works. So yeah.
Sarah, I really liked how you mentioned it's hard to know your limits in a startup setting with WRI. So how can you describe like the teamwork environment with the rest of the board members, and how are you able to communicate what you need support on, or like what your limits are, and how to delegate those tasks among each other?
Um, I guess I'll start off. What's refreshing about WRI's culture is that it's very understanding if you can't get things done. It's just a new exception. Um, and I like that if you bring up something, people can disagree with one another and people will actually respect you for disagreeing. I've seen this multiple times with multiple people because it makes them think harder or sharpen their lines of thinking. And I've had 4 internships in like one a co-op and stuff, and it in established work settings, it's kind of discouraged to disagree, even though, or the culture creates something that it discourages you from disagreeing from things.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely also feel like, you know, that acceptingness and inclusivity is, acceptingness is not a word, but that inclusivity is present in a lot of the different aspects, like disagreeing with each other, and like, you know, if you have a lot going on one week, you know, of course it might make it so that a deadline has to get delayed or something like that. But because everybody in WRI is so passionate about this cause that requires a lot of compassion and requires a lot of empathy, I think that's just a trait that a lot of people have. So everybody's very understanding.
It's super cool to hear about the work culture. Um, with the differences in work culture in a startup scene like WRI, and because we're uniquely built on like a little bit of trust and kinship, um, what is the advantage of this inclusivity and understanding and empathy compared to a strict workplace environment in a work, like in an actual job?
It's easier to feel discouraged. And when you're discouraged, it sometimes feels like a lot of people start not caring once they're past the point of discouragement. And that's why a lot of people in the workplace kind of stop caring because they don't feel like they're being heard, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think that because of that, you know, and among a lot of other things, like people should always feel like they belong, and not just so that they can do their best work, but that's just how things should be generally. But I think especially for organizations like WRI that are trying to serve a population that is maybe different than some of the people who are in WRI are used to. Like, there are people who are from Guinea, but some of us have never been there. Some of us don't, you know, aren't super familiar with the culture. It's very important to be able to be inclusive and to be able to be empathetic, because if we're not, if the solution that we're providing isn't considering what those people really need, and if it's not considering what we could actually do to solve the problem in the best way that works for them, then we're not really solving the problem to begin with. So I think that characteristic of empathy and inclusivity is definitely necessary for organizations like Women's Relief Initiative. Was that the question?
Yeah.
I don't even remember.
Hmm?
I
Wait,
don't
sorry.
even remember if that was a question. Sorry.
Oh, I was just asking, what's the advantage of like having a work culture that's built on empathy and trust? You know, I think in the long term, it just holds that like employees like working to the best of these because they're happy and they are passionate about it. And I think I don't know if I only had a few. No, I've had an experience working with a startup and an experience working at a larger company, and I felt like yeah, you just become a cog in the machine, and then anybody can replace you if they have just better skills. So it's just harder to stay connected and just be passionate about your job. And I think that's an important thing, keeping people in a company. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the experience. Okay, so my next question is, how did each of your roles develop into the the roles that you are right now in the board members?
How did they develop into that?
Yeah, like how did you get started? Like like what kind of conversations did you have to like be a part of the board members in the first place? And then from there, how did your roles develop into what they are now?
I think it's probably kind of similar for both of us, where, it's kind of hard to predict how involved people are going to be when they first get involved in an organization like this. And we just happen to be really passionate about it and put in a lot of effort. So we started, being present at a lot of the meetings. And so they were like, oh, I guess they're really committed to this. So yeah. And then when they sent out like an interest form on if you're interested in becoming a board member, we just both were like, yeah.
I think doing it and then the names followed up with it.
Yeah. Like we considered, we didn't even get titles until like a week ago, 2 weeks. I think we just kind of were doing the things that fit with our skills. And then we were like, what title should we put on this? And then we defined our roles like literally in the past week. So we're just doing what we can and then tried to find a definition for it.
That is very interesting in how fluid it is and how it's the roles are shaped to you too, because I think you guys are considered the experts in all of these things now. Okay, so now what do you enjoy doing most right now to help WR? Like, what's your current project, or what's your out of your many projects? What are your passion projects?
That's interesting. You want to go?
Yeah. I haven't been at WRI to actually make something to actually answer the question, but what I see the projects, there's a lot of me. I assigned myself director of program management, and something I'm very enthusiastic about is seeing people's projects and seeing how that can be developed, or what other opportunities do those projects give us. I guess an example that I brought up is in the curriculum. I see that as a way to educate women to know the materials necessary to make their own pad, hopefully, so they can start their own business. That is a very long term and has not even been begun to be like started project, but yeah.
I think for me, yeah, I have my hands in a lot of different things and I feel excited about pretty much all of them. Sometimes when it gets to the nitty gritty of what you're doing, it can feel sometimes, and that goes for pretty much most things. But I've really enjoyed all of that. I've enjoyed putting together a sponsorship packet, and I've enjoyed putting together a brand guidelines, because it's really allowed for us to tap into everybody who's been passionate about the organization and crowdsource all their thoughts and put together, our brand values, and put together the story of Women's Relief Initiative, and get those pieces to make all the different parts of what we have cohesive, like to make the website cohesive with the like things that we design. And then I think I've just enjoyed the things that have to do with the story of Women's Relief Initiative a lot. So that includes the podcast, in which I get to have really interesting conversations with the other girls in WRI, and then also collaborating with other organizations. So like the book club we're hosting with Operation Period and Code Red Collective, because I'm getting to read these really interesting articles about allyship and then talk to other menstrual equity orgs about it. And it's great.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned that you like to be involved in like piecing WRI together and piecing their story together. It's really helpful for us trying to make this documentary too, because a lot of aspects about that I did not know about when I joined too. And I'm learning about WRI and the history of R&D through doing this documentary. And I just want to say that I know you wrote the fact document, and also I think the employee handbook, and I've been going through that recently to just write up a script. Yeah, to like have people just like actually engage in that story in our document. And so what I'm doing is summarizing it, putting it in a script form, and having people like popcorn read it, so I can record their voice and like do a voiceover, since like none of us can actually be there in person, and we'll have pictures on a slide.
Yeah, and all of those things were, not fully me or anything. Like all those things were crowdsourced and kind of just needed someone to put them together. And even I wasn't, Ian helped put together a lot of those legal documents, like the employee handbook and things like that. It was just, coming up with the way to get all the information from everybody, to get everybody's thoughts and keep everything organized. Yeah. And also some of the writing. But yeah,
that is all the nitty-gritties.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to say, looking from an outside perspective in, it looks extremely impressive, especially that, and to have a substantial curriculum. Like I went through the curriculum too. It's extremely detailed, very textbook like, and it shows a lot to like what WRI can provide, and it's very substantial, and it makes me feel good about like contributing my work here too. So it's awesome. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. So my next question is, how do you guys are both graduates now, basically alumni. So how do you balance WRI with, let's say, your job or your personal life now that we're in this pandemic? Let's say.
You want to go?
Yeah. So honestly, it's pretty hard, considering you kind of feel like there's an imbalanced perspective, because people are just in their houses. I don't have work, and I honestly feel kind of overwhelmed by grad school applications and whatnot, and it's hard to, there's no away from that, since we're kind of not allowed to see other people or like socialize and whatnot because of Corona season. So it's hard to stay motivated and it's hard to get external feedback. And I think our weekly meetings are the best way for that. That keeps us in check and helps motivates us because everyone's really encouraging in the meetings. And yeah.
Yeah, I think you're super right about that. About like, there's not really, I feel like the pandemic makes it so that it feels like there's not an excuse not to be working on stuff because you're just at home, and it makes boundaries really hard, and boundaries are really hard for me anyways. I tend to be someone who just like overcommits to stuff, and especially now that I'm working. I mean, I felt really busy even before I was working, but now that I'm working, I'm kind of struggling to find time to work on all the things that I said I was going to do for WRI. Like every night I get off from work and then I'm like, okay, now I have to work on the website and I have to work on reading the articles for the book club and I need to finish designing the sponsorship packet, which is all fine. And I'm going to find time to do those things. It just feels a little overwhelming. And I don't have enough time to do things, even though I'm just at home all the time because yeah, it just feels like I'm always supposed to be working.
I think Mehraz, that's like the perfect description. It's hard to set boundaries, and without boundaries, you can't think clearly about it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, especially as a lot of us, I feel like already tend to be people who struggle with boundaries and struggle with saying no to extra projects. So we're all kind of struggling out here. And the thing that makes it hard too is that we do care a lot about this topic. So it makes it difficult for us to be like, I mean, we all really do everything we possibly can to help, which is, it makes it sometimes harder to set boundaries. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the energy of our entire group like needs to be balanced with someone telling us how to pace ourselves and how to set mini deadlines for everything instead of jumping on the urge to do everything at once, which is something I also feel, and now it's getting exhausting because you're right, there is not an end to this. You work until you die, but then we gotta pace ourselves before we die. Yeah, like right now I'm supposed to be cooking dinner too. Like I don't know how to establish boundaries with my family yet either. So that's a whole other conversation for some of us out there.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to be explicit, but I think with immigrant families, there's a standard. It's a very rigid standard, and that is something that is in us. And I feel like a lot of people in WRI are from immigrant families, and yeah, that this I can be completely this can be completely misinterpreted or like not coming, you know what I mean? And
no, I know exactly what you mean. I think that one of the things that I talk a lot about with my immigrant family friends and children of immigrant friends is that we grow up with a very high expectation, partially because a lot of our parents are really high achievers, and that's partially the reason they were able to leave their countries and in search of a better life in some ways. And a lot of them are some of the hardest workers, not hardest workers, but like, of course, they had some level of luck and some level of privilege to allow them to get here as well. Probably a lot of them, at least for my family. But I think that expectation and our desire not to disappoint them and to make their sacrifice really worth it to give us a better life makes us have it takes that expectation and really makes us internalize it, and then it applies to all other areas of our life as well. So it's inescapable.
It can be discouraging to have not the same rate of progress as them, because I feel like they had this exponential rise, and I guess right now it feels like, for me, especially during now, it feels like this rather than this.
Yeah, it feels like my parents were so hardworking and amazing, and they were able to do all this by an age where they were even younger than I was, and I'm just out here struggling with my basic school and work tasks. So what am I even doing? Yeah, it's this. I feel like in immigrant families, a lot of the time the standard is unattainable. It's just not. It's just always going to be higher because what our parents did is in some ways always going to be more impressive than what we are doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel. My parents didn't. They didn't come from they didn't, like, they came over here and they had to restart their lives basically at the age of 40. So they've basically given up there, but still they're trying to live through, like, their kids, trying to make them successful and stuff. But I feel like they are very disconnected from what that actually, like, realistically what you need to get to that state, and they don't really look at that. They only look at the end result, and it's kind of harsh to do that, and you just end up resenting. Well, maybe I'm just generalizing, but that was me a little bit. But yeah.
I feel like they think it's a reflection on them that we're not progressing at the same rate as they did. But I guess it's hard for them to consider that we have different baselines, so the rate is going to look different.
Not even different I mean, yes, different baselines for sure, but we also have different challenges that are, it's hard for us to fathom their challenges that they face. All we know is what they've told us, which, sometimes is a lot, sometimes it's not as much, but we also have a different standard of different set of challenges that they find hard to understand, that make us feel very torn between two worlds, and it makes us feel very it makes us feel isolated from both of our identities, and it sometimes makes it, I don't know, like we were talking about this earlier, but inclusivity and belonging is important for everybody to feel good about what they're doing, and it's important just in someone's life to make them happy. A sense of belonging is something that is really necessary for everybody, and when a person doesn't feel a sense of belonging, that's when their sense of self-worth is damaged, and it's when they find it difficult to motivate themselves to do certain things. And so immigrant children often face an extreme case of not feeling like they belong anywhere. They're not Western enough for here, and they're not, for me, I never felt Bangladeshi enough or Muslim for my family. So, feeling a sense of belonging was hard.
I think you hit the nail on the head on that one too. I'm working through trauma that has happened over my childhood. I feel like we need to start a podcast just talking about our past and like talking through and like,
immigrant kids.
I don't know, there's just that, and it's just hard to be a better person. Like, growing out of your childhood is basically very hard. I think for me too, since being isolated in both worlds, it's just like, how do you prop yourself up that way? Like, it's just difficult. Like, I have so much resentment for, like, who would I have been if I was like a white person, and like I didn't have to have all these problems or whatnot. Like, I don't know. There's just lots of uncertainties that I still have to
it's very confusing, you know, coming to terms with the fact that our background as children of immigrants has sometimes harmed our mental health. But at the same time, we're so grateful for our parents and we love our parents so much for everything that they do for us all the time and everything that they did for us and sacrificed for us to get here and give us this life in the first place. Like, it's a very confusing emotional state to be in, I feel like.
Yep. 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 Yeah. So sorry to get off on that tangent, but my last question, or my last couple of questions is, well, since it all relates to WR anyways, yeah, how do you guys imagine WR looking like in the future, in the long term? How do you see your projects progressing in the long term and stuff like that?
I have some ideas. I think that, you know, we need to hammer a lot of this out. And I think a lot of us have different, you know, imaginations for how this is what we want WRI to progress, which is, I think, a great thing. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that it's really great that lots of people are so passionate about it that they envision a long-term future for WRI. I think that the biodegradable pad product is something, especially one that's made with non-commodity items, is something that's necessary in all under-resourced communities and all marginalized communities. I think that it can really, really help to try and end period poverty in a way that's environmentally and economically sustainable. And so, you know, as someone who has not experienced period poverty and someone who has had enough privilege to be able to afford my menstrual products all the time, I am always heartbroken thinking about the fact that there are people who sometimes have to choose between buying menstrual hygiene products or groceries. You know, I think that that's unacceptable, quite frankly. And it happens even here. You know, we are, of course, focusing on underprivileged and under-resourced communities abroad, but I would eventually like to take this product to places like Bangladesh, and I would like to be able to create a type of model in which, like, we sell these products here. That way we can make money to be able to fund our projects abroad so that we can, you know, either donate products or fund like a social enterprise type of model where we allow women in those communities to kind of build their little mini entrepreneurship businesses in which they manufacture and sell these pads themselves and are, you know, maybe able to, in some cases, able to get themselves out of a cycle of poverty. So I think that, you know, if there is some way to sell these products here and use the money to be able to continue our work abroad and expand our work abroad, I think that in a way that's sustainable and helpful in those communities, I would love to be able to do that.
I see the end goal as merging with another company or startup or becoming a subsidiary of a larger company. And this merger is on the basis that we were able to communicate that WRI allows representing a way we can develop local economic issues by uplifting the women in those local communities. And it's a way for companies to see that WRI allows for an investment in human capital, and that is a way to not only get returns, but to expand their mission, but to also address gender issues in local communities. So they are addressing multiple issues by investing in us. long term.
I love
Very,
that.
very cool. Yeah. With the economic model of selling in the U.S. and then that's essentially fundraising for international purposes. Like what? Like where did? Like I feel like did Tom like the Tom shoes? Did they do
Yeah,
something
it's
similar?
similar. It's similar to the Tom's model. I do think,
Awesome.
yeah, I'm not sure Tom's has done it, Warby
Cool.
Parker has done it. I know that there are a lot of companies that have been, I don't want to like misspeak about, so I'm not going to mention any specific companies or anything like that. I know that a lot of people have criticized companies for doing stuff like that because a lot of times they'll like donate defective products or, you know, not as high quality products to other places abroad. And I do not want to do that. Definitely, you know, if we did that, I would want to give the same exact quality of product. And, you know, it's kind of the whole teach someone to fish as opposed to giving them a fish concept. I think that donating is awesome and it's great that we're doing that as our short-term goal right now in our summer project. And I think that we should be able to donate products once we have the biodegradable product down as well. But I do think that that social enterprise type of model in which we give the women in those communities the resources to uplift themselves and to empower them to own their own little businesses or to bring themselves out of a cycle of poverty. I think that that teaching a man to fish kind of thing is important in terms of providing long-term sustainable help.
Yeah, for sure. I think that teaching the man how to fish for himself is an innovative concept for WRI to have, and it kind of it pushes that sustainability outside of just the path being biodegradable, but in the long term for WRI too. I think that is very like a very cool aspect for other people to get involved into. Are you guys planning to keep in touch with each other for the long term and like stay involved in WRI?
I would like to.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah. I think that it's kind of weird because I think both of us started remotely, so none of us have met each other in person actually. So it's very weird because it feels like we know each other. I
Yeah.
feel like I know everybody, so it's kind of bizarre what this COVID world has, the situation that it's put us in which we have never met the people that we work with, but we still feel like we know each other really well. So yeah.
Yeah, me too. I felt like it was gonna be so hard to know people on the team and like to know what's going on and if my personality is gonna fit like anywhere. But surprisingly, like talking to you guys and like just R&D meetings have been surprisingly very encouraging, like you mentioned, and like people are so friendly. Like they're actually really friendly.
Mhm.
And which is awesome. I think I've been looking for this kind of environment for a long time. It's just people having the same goal and like doing work and like not being first to do work or like I don't know. It's different from study groups. Those can get very clicky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that,
but
sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say like that's all of the questions that I have, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, um, I was just gonna say, I think that there have definitely been challenges in this. I just think that I get tired of staring at a screen and I feel like that's all I do. So I actually do enjoy meeting people in person and, you know, but the challenge hasn't been not having sense of belonging. Like I definitely feel very understood and I feel a sense of belonging in WRI, definitely. It's just, you know, the technological challenges of never actually interacting face to face with a lot of people that's challenging.
And Kim, I like that you talked about like study groups. I do really enjoy like in person, but with classes, it feels like everyone has the same goal, is to get the best grade for themselves. That's a very shallow value, and so it feels like it it has no meaning to them, and that that doesn't set a great tone for it. Or that's how it is that's how what I saw in a lot of classes, not every class, but with this, since everyone it feels close to this, I feel like that set a positive tone for how we feel.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it directly translates to being in an actual work environment because you are forced to be nice and like belong to some kind of group or team when you're in a workplace. And this is has been the most positive experience I've had in college. I haven't actually had any group projects yet, and I feel like those just or those that I've been like writing projects or stuff like that, it's just very tiring because people do not commit to the same level as you, or they just don't want to communicate because they don't share the same need. And plus, different roles are established. If one person thinks you're doing all the work, then they clearly don't need to do to have their input here.
The thing to say about that is when it that varies, because obviously people who I feel like there's a given that someone's not going to be as passionate as you are, or you're not going to be as passionate as they are. And I feel like with in those circumstances, it's especially necessary to like remind them how well what they've contributed and ask for their help so they can stay passionate, because it is harder for them to stay passionate. And I've been the person who's done a lot of the work in school, and also I've also been the person who's done the least amount of work in school, uh, based on. But I've found that how your group members treat you and how you treat them definitely influences how your role in the project.
Yeah, that is a good perspective. There is some degree that like one can control like how to set the tone and stuff. So I haven't tried that because I don't know, I keep making assumptions about people, like assuming that they would also have the same vigor as me, or like having the same like perspective as me coming in. So I never actually addressed that until it's like too late, and I just get left like alone, I guess, which is bad on me. But yeah.
And I only learned this from being in both roles, as the lackluster and the driver.
Interesting.
I see. Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys for your time, especially because you guys have jobs and are, well, Mehraz, you have a job, and you and Sarah, you're applying to grad school. So thank you so much for taking your time out of this weekday in the evening, and it's time for you guys to rest and eat dinner. I think I need to do that too.
Me too. Sorry to be late.
Yeah. No worries. It's totally fine.
Thanks.
And I hope this documentary is gonna go well, and I'm like it is gonna go well, because it's just like the more we progress, the more me and Mama Do and Henny and have more ideas about how to piece it all together, and it's just a progress that keeps on progressing. It's just that I don't have a lot of I haven't edited anything before or interviewed anyone before, so this is all very new to me. But I am very excited to do it, and I'm gonna try my best to do it, and not like I have high expectations and standards. So what I think will be, I don't know, if I piece something terrible on a documentary, I don't think I'll let that happen. And plus, like, I'll have everyone's input at the end of the product too, and like there's so many directions you can take this in terms of theme and like how something is implemented. So I'm excited for that last step of opinions and advice from people too.
I think you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I'll see you guys
Bye.
later, I guess. Bye, everyone.